So the task at hand is our panelists are going to give us a couple of minutes presenting why they like a certain social media site. Not in general, they're not invested in it necessarily, it's for their personal business and why they think it works the best. And I encourage you, after we go through those, to ask some tough questions. We're going to open it up to the audience as well. But if you don't mind starting,
sure.
Dustin, we can go from there.
So I guess, for our business at DocuSign, we're we have a big network of about 50 million users, and we're trying to help drive digital transaction management, keeping businesses digital. And by far and away, the best social media site that we leverage is LinkedIn. Without question, it has the best sources for data. Our sales teams are in LinkedIn all day long. We run campaigns to specific buyer audiences and industry verticals. So it gives us the most tailored content, the most segmented data that we can possibly use to do outreach. And they've got these in-mail programs where you can directly target, exchange content, build communities. They've got actual community sites as well where we can create content and get people really talking about new innovations that we're introducing or how people are leveraging and putting use case information in place. So for us, it's just a great community source where business leaders can get together and drive innovation through their own businesses. And we want to be a part of those conversations. So for us, it's just the best of all the sites that we use. And we do use them all. So.
Well, we said there's not been a lot of debate, so I'll debate, and I'll say that Twitter is the best. We love Twitter. Mary Kay has an account, and that's certainly about beauty and business. But the Pink Cadillac has its own Twitter account, so that's MK Pink Caddy. And she goes on the road trip, she goes to the mall, she has a lot of fun. She does shout outs to other brands, so if you want your brand to be talked about, you can tweet with her. And then I have a personal account that I use for things that are on my mind, things that I want to comment on. I connect with employees, team members. I've met some great folks through Twitter. And for me, it's like a 24/7 cocktail party. You can kind of drop in, no alcohol, but you can just kind of drop in anytime. You talk to some people you know, and then you meet new friends.
Great.
I always drink on Twitter.
Much better Twitter.
I think the most valuable network that a brand can tap into is your existing customer network or your network of interested potential customers. I've been around long enough, it's been fortunate enough to do marketing campaigns on CompuServe, Prodigy, AOL, MySpace, now Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. I've seen a lot of social networks flame up and flare out, and they come and go. And I'm not here to say that Facebook's going to go out of business or anything like that, but I'm stuck on a desert island, and my money is stuck in an investment, so I'm going to invest in my existing customers. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that if you think about the behavior of people when they log into a social network, they're going there because they want to have intimate conversations with their friends or their family. 0% of the people who log into Facebook today are thinking about, I wish I could talk to the Wonderfactory, or I wish I could hear from the Wonderfactory. On the best day, when I market over Facebook, I'm going to capture the attention of 1% of the people that I interact with. On my website or on my consumer-facing app, 100% of the people, or near 100% of the people there, are there because they're aware of me and they have an inkling that maybe I could help them. So 100% of my investment is going to go toward helping people move along the purchase funnel. So I'm not saying don't invest in Facebook or Twitter, or any of those things. Of course you have to, and of course our clients do. But if you're not super serving your super passionate fans, you might be wasting your money.
Let me ask a quick question. I mean, that's assuming that the firm has a direct relationship with their consumers. What if you're a record label and don't know your customers directly?
Oh gosh, I think that one of the problems that we have in marketing today, and it could be a record label or it could be with any kind of a brand, we've spent so many years advertising to people who go to the bathroom when we message them. And we've talked ourselves into believing that we have nothing to say or nothing of interest and nobody wants to hear from us. And it's because we haven't really tried. I think if you're a record label and you're having trouble building bonds with your audience, you're suffering from a lack of imagination. Okay.
Great.
So at Kraft Foods, it's Tumblr. We use all of the platforms, but for us, it's about flexibility. It's not about trying to fit our marketing message into 15 seconds or 140 characters, and we do that as well, but the flexibility that the platform offers is really interesting to our marketers. Being able to tell stories in video and not being limited on space, being able to talk in text or animated GIFs, any of those pieces of content make sense in Tumblr. And then Tumblr does a great job of allowing us to tell that story in mobile, in the tablet, and on the PC. But the second piece is really about owning our consumer. On Tumblr, you can use your own domain, right? You can use your own data tags. You can know what's going on that site, and they actually let you talk to your whole audience. So instead of the 6% reach or the 15% reach or whatever the actual reach algorithm on some of the other sites are, you talk to your audience who's chosen to follow you.
I mean, in an old media landscape, we might see brands choosing specific outlets and developing a relationship with them. To what extent do you think it is important to focus on one social media site and really cultivate that relationship with either the users of that social media site or the company itself? And to what extent do you think it's important to go across social media sites? Sheryl, can I start with you?
We actually at Mary Kay do go across multi-channels, and it varies by market. So for example, in Brazil, they've had great success with Instagram. So we do use the Facebook and multiple channels, but I think you have to figure out, really to Bob's point, where is your voice and your story best going to fit? And you'll go crazy trying to be in all the channels, but I think most brands do need to be in probably at least 3, if not 4, at some point, given their business and promotion objectives.
Okay.
I feel the same. If you're not promoting, the thing about not being in some of these channels is that people are there, so you're just leaving audiences out if you're not making the effort. We have a dedicated social media team that is constantly tweeting and Facebooking and creating this community in all those channels. And it's a super cheap way to amplify all the great news, all the great messages, all the new product innovation, way more effectively because you're getting referral and people excited about it than just using traditional advertising methods. Mm-hmm. So I think, if I was going to spend my last dollar, my first dollar in marketing, it would always be in social media today, which is not how I felt 5 years ago. Not even close.
Really interesting.
Well, I think it's important to be across platforms. I think you have to add value to consumers, right? I mean, you have to tell a story they're interested in seeing or in hearing. You have to give them something of value. So for Kraft Foods, you look at the recipe content that we have around food, and Pinterest makes a ton of sense for us. Yeah. It's much more difficult to communicate that visual message on Twitter for us. But also has to add value back to Kraft Foods. We have to know that it's leading to sales, that people are actually doing something different because we've communicated with them on that platform. And I think too many companies go across too many platforms, don't measure it, and then don't understand why social media is not paying out for them.
And so in terms of ROI, do you actually think that Tumblr, is that the reason that you have chosen Tumblr? Kind of statistically, is it really hands down the winner for you guys in terms of results?
I mean, Tumblr, it's the only platform that allows us to put all of our tracking codes on the platform, right? On Facebook, so you post a picture and you know how many people have liked it or things like that, but really, what happened after that? And who is that consumer? Can you retarget them? Can you go back and communicate with them? Do you know what messaging they've been exposed to prior? And Tumblr allows us to do that. The other platforms, I think it's a black box, really.
Mm. Yeah,
it's amazing how we've somebody said at the last panel that the internet is just a baby, and it really is. We've yet to even scratch the surface of what we can do in social media, and yet we speak about everything in absolutes. What's the best network, and what's the most important metric that we should have? And I think that we forget that there's a lot of experimentation that has to happen. So I think you're right. You have to try all of them, experiment on all of them, but optimize around the best, just like you would in direct mail.
Mm-hmm. Totally right. And in our case, that's exactly what we've done, is gone through and tried all these sites. But when it comes to spending money, a lot of them you don't spend money on, right? You can try, we tried promoted tweets. They didn't actually pay back as effectively as our LinkedIn in-mail campaigns. But you do the side-by-side comparisons, and when you're going to spend dollars, you definitely want to spend them against the vehicle or the network that is deriving the best payback and ROI for you.
And do you think there are any truths about how often is appropriate to communicate with consumers? How often do people want to hear, and what have you found works best?
I think there's a certain amount of frequency, and you find that the people who are most engaged, they're hungry for that content. So you want to feed those people who are most anxious to be an advocate for your brand, and that might mean at least a couple of times a day. Now, I can say that, but Ted Rubin, who's one of the most followed CMOs, he's tweeting probably every 12 to 15 seconds, but his brand is highly engaged. He recognizes everybody. He answers everybody. That works for his brand and his following. So it definitely varies.
What are some mistakes you've seen firms engage in when it comes to social media? Any no-nos or advice for the...
I don't think it's a no-no, but I think one of the mistakes we have is that we tend to talk about brand publishing. Yeah. And we think about marketing over social media as publishing. And so we often measure results the way a publisher would. What's the engagement? How many likes do we get? How many shares do we get? How many people have read our content? And that's good if you're trying to build awareness, but I think that while as marketers and advertisers, we want to use the conventions of publishers, whether it's articles or photos or videos, we have to remember that we really do have to sell things. So be as helpful as you can with your content, but don't forget that there's a sales funnel. You're building awareness, you're getting interest, you're building desire, you're closing a sale. And I think too many people look at social media as awareness building only, and they don't look at it in terms of how they can really help people get through the funnel.
I'd echo that too. It's accountability, right? Yeah. People don't have the same accountability in social. It's a test. We do this in a dark corner, but is it selling product? And if it's not, it's the wrong place for dollars.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks that are new to it as well, companies start promoting very aggressively, broadcasting in a way that maybe doesn't drive engagement. I mean, that was one of the big things we had to figure out what is the kind of content and how do we promote a deeper level of dialogue. And if you're not seeing people come back and engaging, you need to stop because people get burned out. It's not useful, and you don't come across as authentic or helpful at that point. In fact, you can see your clout scores drop as a result of just broadcasting too much and not, in fact, engaging people in a way that leads to actually community building. That's a huge mistake I see a lot of companies making.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I'd say to my group, there are three things. First of all, is it true? And I think companies and people get in trouble when they tweet something and don't know if it's true. Is it kind? And that's really part of our brand, but just to not make fun of people or situations. And then number three, is it necessary? Yeah. I mean, just because you brushed your teeth, that wasn't necessary for people to know.
Right. I mean, and to what extent do you think that CEOs and CMOs' tweets need to be sanitized? I mean, I think about a certain media mogul whose last name is Murdoch, whose PR people should get him as far away from Twitter as humanly possible. Kind of how much control should the comms team have, ultimately?
It depends on their CEO and the personality. I mean, ideally, you want the authenticity to be there. So there are a lot of CEOs who are doing a great job of talking about what their vision and how they personally feel about their role. But there are others who do need their handlers.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, I think you got to look at how aligned is your company's brand proposition with your CEO's brand, and if they aren't well aligned, you better moderate a bit and provide some sort of editorial, because otherwise you're going to find yourself drifting apart.
That's a good point. Let's open it up for questions. If anyone, yes, in the red, right there.
Two questions. One is, how much do you believe the self-reported data from a lot of these platforms in terms of who they're reaching? And two, if you're marketing to an older audience, say 55 plus, for example, where would you be and not be?
Great. Let's start with the believability of the reported metrics, if you don't mind.
I sit on a Tumblr platform with a lot of ours, and we know the reach, right? We know the reblogs, we know who's seeing it, and we know where those people go beyond that. I think that the metrics you see on a number of other major platforms, I think that you should probably explore that a little deeper.
I like the parallels. I started the morning with China and their data believability. We're now going to the social networking sites. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
I mean, we look at it directionally, and we're really looking for when do those metrics move, as opposed to getting caught up in the absolute number. Okay. So at this point, until or unless I have reason to believe the metrics are wrong, we do use them, but we use them to measure what's our progress versus last month or last year or a similar event. So it's more the relative direction as opposed to the absolute.
Okay. What about the question about older consumers and how to reach them? I assume it's not through Tumblr.
Yeah. One of our biggest clients is AARP, so I would advertise in AARP the magazine, AARP the app. I would spend heavily on AARP's website.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't AARP the magazine with like the largest circulation in America?
Yes,
it's
it is.
Huge. So anyways, I don't know why I'm plugging them. Sorry, go ahead.
But you can't really trust their numbers because you can't trust any numbers. No, I'm kidding. You can absolutely trust their numbers. They circulate to 1 billion people.
Yeah, but I think as well, some of the earlier sites are just, I mean, if you just look at the maturity and adoption levels, I mean, certainly Facebook is probably far more adopted than Instagram or Snapchat by older consumers. And so I think you can look at just the, when these things came online and the demographics are going to skew toward the more mature sites getting, I think, some of the older audiences as well. And some of them actually have divisions where they're actually working on some of that. But I feel good about the data. I mean, most of what they supply is pretty well backed up, but to your point, it's the trends that I mostly look at. Where are things surging or where are things declining, and how does that affect what we think will happen in the future with the relationships or the investments that we're making?
Okay, let's get another question from the audience. We have someone right here.
Thanks. Oh, I've spent my career in the world of selling intangibles, and often services that are multi-year, 6, 7-figure kinds of projects. So it's often really difficult to point to what is it that really got you the sale. So I hear what you're saying, and I love it. And for me, it's like I wish we could make those connections really crisp. Your point about if it's just generating awareness, you're not getting sales, it's the wrong place for your money. I just harken back to years ago, McGraw-Hill had this ad, this grouchy old guy, and you know the one I'm talking about.
I don't know you, I don't know where you came from.
Yeah, so what is it that you want to sell me?
Yeah, right.
And so I'm really asking the question, is there no place for awareness building or a part of your budget that really is devoted to awareness building?
It's a great question.
Well, let me clarify real quick. I didn't say if it was awareness, you shouldn't be spending your dollars there. If it's not delivering sales, meaning you have other mediums to use. So you can use it for awareness, and you can use other mediums to build that relationship. But I would argue that if you know what a consumer is being exposed to, and that's why I keep talking about data and tagging and understanding the consumer. If you know what they're exposed to in television and print and in digital, you can use different platforms for awareness and use the other ones to close the sale, to educate, to get beyond that awareness curve.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to take that up? Okay, we'll go to the next one. We have time for one more question. Right here.
I don't want to let an opportunity pass. So we tend to get very focused on selling the product, but almost every global company has made significant commitments that position them reputationally relative to what they think their consumers care about. And in the last 30 days, 2 articles were published, one by the head of Coke's Macro Trends saying this is the first time in history that you could go around the world and ask people what are the most important problems we face, and you'd get the same answers all around the world for the first time. So given those 2 things, and given we're talking here about what most people would argue are some of the best platforms for advocacy and for reputation and for presenting what you care about as a company, what does that mean about how much of your work and spend and effort should be in that area? And do you believe the guy at Coke who says that's a significant investment you have to make to be around long term?
I'd love to start that one off, because Coke is actually one of our clients, and we built a site for them that is, for all intents and purposes, it converted their corporate site into a digital magazine. And there are a lot of reasons why they did it, and there are a lot of ways that they measure success of the site. But one of the most important reasons they did it is because the world had a voice about what Coca-Cola was doing, about water replenishment and sustainability and women's rights issues and employment and things like that. And all those conversations were taking place around the world without Coke being able to participate in that. And by building their site, it gave them the ability to address those issues that are important to their customers, because their customers care about employment and sustainability and things like that. And it gave them the ability to directly address those issues that were important to their customers. And they're hearing from their customers all over the world about what they want Coke to address. So again, that's another reason why I might invest my money in an optimal web experience or a customer-facing app, because it allows you to do things like that.
Right. Do you want to?
I was just saying, I think it's critically important because, particularly for millennials these days, they want to be part of a cause. They don't want to just buy a product because it's a great product. And so if you're not taking advantage of the opportunity to get in the forums, to curate content, reinforce positive messages that your corporation's aligned with in these global forums, you're missing an opportunity to really build the next generation customer base who's different than the way we grew up.
Excellent. Thanks for that question, and thank you all.
Thank you.